So let me start by saying that I'm quite a big fan of classic cars, and one of the main reasons for that has been this car. This is Adams's minty green BMW E21, which I've dubbed Granny Smith. In the past we did what we like to do most and took her old bones on some really fun road trips, which has infected me with something that I like to call the vibes. That special feeling when you're traveling in an old car, taking the trip at your own pace, enjoying every moment, knowing full well that even if the car breaks down, you're probably going to be able to get it running again with some basic tools. And I wanted to experience that again, but in my own car. And while getting an old BMW, Golf or a Mercedes would be cool, but as much as people love them here and love you for owning one, they are unfortunately not very special to me. The cars I prefer actually originate from the completely different side of the world, which is why I got this. This is an EP70, the third generation of the Toyota Starlet and the first one to be front-wheel drive. This one is from 1988, which makes it old enough to qualify as a classic car here in Slovenia. And it's also a perfect choice for me, as I'm a big fan of mainly 80s and 90s, but also 70s Japanese cars. It was by some sheer coincidence that this car appeared for sale, as they are pretty uncommon here. And because it also looked pretty good in the pictures, Adams and I decided to check it out. The car was parked in some sort of wood storage facility, which is great as it means it was sitting in a warm and dry place. It had a dead battery, so to get it out we had to jump it with the granny.
Damn, this is tighter than your mom last night.
Outside I could see that the interior and the exterior were in pretty good condition, with some imperfections here and there. The engine sounded healthy, but it was running a bit rough, probably because of the combination of old gas and an unadjusted carburetor. But that wouldn't deter me from buying it. The seller agreed to my offer of 1,000 euros, and after the paperwork was done, I had added another nugget to the fleet. Now I just had to get it back home.
Oh, she's smoking quite a bit.
She died on us at the gas station. We're gonna go replace the battery at Adams's. I have to keep a little bit of throttle on so she doesn't die.
At Adams's, he let me borrow the battery out of the E21 so I could make it home without the fear of the car dying on me in traffic. And the next day when we were heading off on the E21 adventure, I would give it back. Yes, that E21 adventure. The one that happened in 2022. Yes, I've had this car for almost 3 years now, but because of many projects and in recent years the shenanigans of nugget-shaped vehicles, I never had the time to give her the attention she deserves. I started her once in between to see if she still works, just to put her back into storage. But now it's finally time to give her some love so she can hit the streets next summer.
Looks like this perfectly flat hood was used as a chalkboard at some point. She is dusty.
But let's make sure she actually starts. I'm gonna do it properly this time. First, I wanna check the state of the gas in the tank.
Oh. Is there any gas still in there though? There seems to be something sloshing around in there, yeah.
When gasoline is exposed to air, it oxidizes and starts losing some of its properties. So, because it has been sitting for a couple of years now, I decided it's best to pump it out.
Warranty. Holy shit. It's in German. There's information about your spark plug gaps in the owner's manual. Oh my god. Those were really different times. What? What? It's a 12. I've never seen a 12 before. Must be a Japanese thing.
But gas is not the only thing that can oxidize. These older cars pretty much all use metal gas tanks, which can rust. From what I've seen, that can create all sorts of nightmares, from leaks to clogs in the fuel delivery system, and before I try to start the car again, I want to know what I'm dealing with. So this car is carbureted, which means there is no fuel pump here, but there is still the fuel level sensor.
There we go. There's definitely gas in there. I can smell it and I can see it. Let's see what we're working with. Oh, you know what? There's definitely gas in there. There's quite a lot of it actually. But I see no rust.
Luckily there is no rust yet, but looks like there are these spots where the paint or some protective coating is peeling off. So maybe it would be a good idea to coat the inside of the gas tank with something. I'll need to look into that. I drained the tank as best as I could and put some fresh gas inside. I'll go and fill the tank when the car is properly drivable, and I'll add some fuel stabilizer to make the gas last and helps protect the tank as well. Next, let's talk about the engine. This is the 1E. Yes, it's just called the 1E. It's not quite the 1E FE yet, because like I said, it's carbureted. It's a 1-liter engine producing about 55 horsepower. It's a single overhead cam with the exact number of valves per cylinder as a 2009 Mustang GT. There also exists an EP71 version of this car, which has a 1.3-liter, and there is also a spicier turbo version of that. But I still like this engine as it is super simple. As simple as it could be, and also everything is super accessible. It'll need some maintenance done before we get her on the road, as it seems like the belts are a little old and there might have been some leakage around the thermostat and water pump.
It got a new coil recently. These are not vacuum lines. These rubber hoses feel solid for the age. You know, if this was a BMW, this would be falling apart. But
before we start her up, it's also important to check the fluids.
Oh, this bitch empty.
I also checked the state of the air filter to make sure it didn't disintegrate, and I was about to feed it to the engine. Because the engine hasn't been started in over 2 years now, I also lubricated the cylinders with a little bit of engine oil to ease up the first start. The old battery was dead, so I put in one that was scavenged from the... and so it was finally time to start it.
You have to turn this on. Okay, choke is on. Let's see. You're neutral. Okay, let's see. Is the battery not good? It's 12.8. It should be able to start.
And she runs. She probably had to chew through some of that old gas that was still in the lines, because after that each individual cold start was quicker. I let her run so I could see if she warms up normally to the operating temperature. In the meantime, I noticed a couple of things like the exhaust leak and that the clutch pedal is pretty low, which might be because the clutch needs to be bled, or it might just be worn out. When she warmed up, the electric fan kicked in and there didn't seem to be any leaks from the cooling system, which was awesome. One less thing to worry about. Then I wanted to get rid of all the dust and spiderwebs she accumulated, so she got a well-deserved wash. I also cleaned up the interior as it started to accumulate some mold while in storage.
I fucking love this interior. Everything is brown. Everything, including the seat belts. And under the covers, these seats are in amazing condition. I like these old man colors, like brown, ochre, gray.
With the car nice and clean, it was time to thoroughly inspect her to see what sort of state she's in mechanically. The front brakes work perfectly, but the rear ones seem to be a little weak, and also the right one is a little worse than the left. Next, let's take a look at the situation underneath. The engine looks good. The fact that the car still has the original engine covers is amazing and a true testament to how well it was taken care of. There seemed to be a little oil leaking from the front main seal, and the radiator is also corroded, so I'll try to find a new one. I also found where the fuel filter is, and that will also have to be replaced. Then the suspension, which is immaculate. All the tie rods and ball joints have basically zero play, with the exception of the right inner tie rod, but the amount of play is so small that it doesn't yet need to be replaced. But there is play in the rear right wheel bearing, so at the time I thought that I'll need to replace it. Then I need to find the exhaust leak, or I guess leaks would be more accurate, because it seems people have already welded, or I guess built up weld material, like beavers, on pretty much every connecting point between the mufflers and pipes, and it seems none of them were successful in the long run. And because there are holes in the mufflers as well, I might have to get a complete new system made, which is probably going to be the most expensive thing on the car yet. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Because this is an 80s Japanese hatchback, you might be wondering what the rust situation is like. Well, I'm just gonna say, I was pleasantly surprised.
The lack of rust on this car by its age and by it being Japanese is astonishing to me. There are a couple areas which are a little bit questionable, like this. It's a little crunchy here, and like here. These areas might need a little bit of wire brush action and some paint. Otherwise, I think the whole car can just be coated with something like lanolin and it'll be preserved. The rear beam is also in incredible condition. Like, it's even better as on the blue. There's a bit of surface rust, but that's nothing for this age. And also, interestingly, this car has a panhard bar, which makes its suspension more advanced than probably 90% of nuggets coming on the market in the current year. They used to make better cars. That's 100% true. There are some parts that have a little bit of cosmetic rust that are just, it's surface rust that hasn't gone in too much, but needs to be taken care of. But all of this, like, ever since I had the car, this hasn't progressed. It's been the same because the car has been in a covered garage, so it hasn't progressed. So this next thing is going to be very important to some viewers, mainly Irish Toyota fans. Are the pockets mint? This one is pretty good. It's a little bit happening here. It's been dented a little bit here. But pretty much, this is a good, it's a good pocket. Not the best pocket, but it's okay. This one, yeah, this one's fucked. The pockets are not mint, lads.
The front brakes were also in great condition, which wasn't a surprise due to their performance on the test.
It's just, it works. It works. I thought Howard dreams about this.
With the car on the floor, I also checked all the functions mandatory for the tech inspection. And again, I was pleasantly surprised. Everything except for the front position lights was working. And it wasn't just the mandatory stuff. Pretty much every electrical function in the car was working.
What do we think? Oh my... What about this? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it works. And it works well.
All of that was such a pleasant surprise, especially for me, because I usually buy cars knowing that they have tons of stuff wrong with them, and then on close inspection I find even more things to fix. So a car like this, with 80% of stuff working, really is a breath of fresh air. But now that I know what the car needs, I know what I'll prioritize. So I decided to leave the exhaust for later, as it's probably something I'm not going to be able to do myself. Instead, I'll focus on the rear brakes and the wheel bearing. I'll also flush the brake fluid, as it seems like it's pretty old. While taking the drum off, I realized that this car doesn't have the ball bearings like I'm used to in more modern vehicles, but instead uses tapered roller bearings. These are not pressed in, but are just held in with a nut which is tightened just a little bit, and the reason that the wheel had play was probably because it wasn't tightened enough. I was pretty sure that was the case because the outer rings of the bearings didn't have any wear marks on them on either side. What was also interesting is that the brake shoes and the unpainted intern cylinders were also pretty new, so I was pretty confused why they weren't performing well. However, while cleaning the shaft for the wheel bearing, or whatever you call them, I noticed that on both sides it was blue on a certain spot, which meant that things have gotten pretty spicy in here. I don't know if someone gave the bearing nut too much beans or the brakes were locking up, but if it was the brakes, that might mean the drums are warped. The other theory is that it's the brake proportioning valve. Oh god, please, not again. I cleaned the mechanisms on both sides and lubricated some spots with ceramic grease. I also completely loosened both drums. I put fresh grease into the bearings and reassembled the drums. I couldn't find the exact torque spec for the nut, but I've heard that after you tighten it, you should still be able to move the washer underneath. And I also adjusted both drums, which is much simpler here because the Japanese know how to make cars. I ordered a new fuel cap. I couldn't find one for an EP70, so this one is for an EP80. It didn't fit at first, but after shortening these prongs, it worked just fine.
This handle is incredibly flimsy. I guess that's what I get for not ordering an OEM Toyota part, but it works.
I also realized that the front position lights aren't working, because they don't exist. Or rather, the car doesn't have them. And apparently to punish my ignorance, the filament on one of the headlight bulbs broke off when I was taking it out of the car. These bulbs are side specific and the one I have as a spare is unfortunately for the right side. So I'm going to have to order a new one. The brake fluid that the car specifies is supposed to be .3. Technically, you can put .4 into a .3 system, but not the other way around. But I still decided to go with .3 because it has better resistance to moisture. And I also changed the clutch fluid, but the pedal feel didn't change, so I'll have to replace the clutch down the line. And because winter is upon us, I also checked the state of the coolant and washer fluid. The car is stored in a dry spot, but it's not heated, and even though the temperatures don't get super low here, we did get -20 Celsius at least once from what I can remember, so it's better to be sure. That's pretty much everything I plan to do. I still needed to check if the rear brakes now work as they should, and they don't. So this is officially a prank, as I have tried to tighten the right drum and I even took it apart to see if anything was wrong. And all that made barely any difference. But it's okay, I'll let that slide since everything else was in such superb condition. Before I do anything else here, I want to drive a car a little bit to see if anything changes, because drums are sometimes magical like that. The plan for the future is pretty simple. First, I want to fix all those pesky specks of rust all over the car, so she'll look pretty when I apply for the extension of the classic car certificate. And I also want to do a big service on the engine and replace everything I already found in this video and stuff that are yet to pop up. Then when all that is sorted, I might want to look towards some cosmetic modifications, some coilovers, and perhaps some period correct wheels. Though I can already tell you that I don't plan on rolling the fenders, cause I think it would be a shame. That's going to be it for now. I hope you're as excited as me about this project, and let me know what you think about the car in the comments below. Like always, I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want, you can leave a like or even subscribe to the channel. Goodbye for now, and I wish you a great rest of your day.